In this video, we are talking about Bob Chapek getting a 3-year contract renewal. The Hollywood trades are all abuzz about it. We're going to talk about it up next. Welcome aboard to another episode of OG 55, where we're going to talk all about Bob Chapek, fan favorite Bob Chapek.
Exactly. Yeah, some people have started the celebration early, as some people have here. There you go.
You know, right? Cheers.
Exactly.
But we have a lot to break down today. But before we do that, I want to introduce my fantastic panel. Right over here, Mr. Vash Guy, Producer Dre, Dr. Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. Welcome back, brother.
Hey, happy to be back. A very exciting topic. I think a lot of our viewers were looking for this one from us, so I'm happy to be here. So glad that you invited me. If you guys want to interact with me at home, you can go ahead and do so right down there at Vash Sky, just on Twitter right there, for all your robust discussion. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at OrangeCo55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. Let's see.
Spelling.
There you go. Perfect.
And down below, it's been a little while, but we have Alia back on deck. Alia, aloha. It is fantastic having you join us again. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
On Twitter, and it's at Alia Aloha.
Perfect. And cheers. Clink, clink.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
I spilled some of it.
And adjacent to me is Mr. Matthew Murr. Matthew, how you doing today, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Good. It's great to have you back, Matthew.
Although maybe just a little worse for wear.
I'm sorry, what
maybe
was that,
just
sir?
a little worse for wear about what Chapek. Maybe just a little worse for wear about what Disney's going to do next.
Yes, it was.
If that makes much sense.
It's going to be very interesting. If you can let everyone at home know where they can find you on social media, Matthew.
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew85190042.
Perfect. And Matthew's got a doozy of a Twitter handle. I will definitely link that down below to make it a little easier to follow him. Matthew is a good friend of the channel, and you should definitely check him out. He has a lot of insight and some pretty great opinions and knowledge on the Walt Disney Company. So definitely check him out on Twitter. So we are going to break down today this news that the Walt Disney Company, the Disney board, unanimously extended Bob Chapek's contract for 3 more years. And Hollywood is big mad about this. Believe me, they're big mad about this. You can see it in the trades, like the angry language and all these. It's wild, absolutely wild. Dre, I'm going to start with you. Overall thoughts on Chapes getting renewed, overall vibe. Where are you at right now with this?
Well, some people were surprised, and I think a lot of people were surprised because some of that, I think, is a little bit of wish fulfillment. Others were, maybe listening to the wrong people, essentially, about what was going to go on there. But, Alia, we had this discussion, and you can back me up here. And I think I reiterated it on a couple of shows afterwards. But I don't think there was any doubt that Bob Chapek was going to be renewed. In fact, as you know, I really did take what the board members like Susan Arnold were saying about how they had their full confidence in Chapek as basically to mean that I think he's very, very much safe. In fact, so safe that they will likely extend him. And if they do, which looked very, very likely, it's likely going to be right before D23 Expo, or at least before D23 Expo. That was kind of the timeline I think we had discussed, Alia. And sure enough, look who's right. But no, look, it was all of us on this show and even other contributors, we were all kind of putting the pieces together and saying, this is probably how it's going to be. So a lot of people were surprised, but if you heard it here on this show, maybe you weren't. So this should be a defining moment for us in terms of like, hey, are we in tune with what's actually going on with the company? Are our sources pretty in tune? Is our reasoning pretty in tune? And it looks like in this case it was.
Absolutely. Ali Aloha, what are your overall thoughts on Bob Chapek getting renewed for 3 more years?
Not surprised at all. I felt that the only thing that would interfere with it was his personal opinion and choice, i.e. if he wanted to resign or wasn't interested in pursuing it, but not surprised at all. I was looking at, I really believe Wall Street views Disney and Comcast Universal as peers, and their market cap has been about the same. And I think as long as it was within that about 20% range, about 80% or above and of that range of Comcast market cap, I felt he was safe. So I wasn't surprised at all when he was renewed.
Well, yeah. And the board, I think, also realizes that Chapek really hasn't had that much time to kind of show like what Bob Chapek can do. I mean, it's only been 6 months since Iger left. And Iger, he was chairman of the board until December, right, of 2021. But really, he was kind of like almost like a co-CEO until he left. Let's be completely honest with let's be completely honest with ourselves. I mean, he left basically as a co-partner running this company. Chapek has only had like full autonomy for 6 months. I mean, they have to give him a little bit of a chance to sort of like kind of execute his vision and what he wants to do with the company without Iger kind of looming over his shoulder, right? I mean,
and a few of those months had him dealing with a coup.
Right. Exactly. 100%.
Exactly.
He was stymied coming out of the gate, even from a post-Eiger era of the company. So he really hasn't had that much time to kind of spread his wings, so to speak. But Ali, I think you were going to say something there at the end.
I did see, and I even saw it with the Just Twitter crowd, but I also saw it in some of the trades. There was kind of a resignation, just, okay, our attempts failed. He's there now for 3 years, have to accept it. I did see with some on Just Twitter some gaslighting, like, I knew this was going to happen, or I'm not surprised. But I knew with some of them that was very not true. So I'm kind of seeing there's just an acceptance from some, just because what can you do? He's there for 3 years, unless something really, really happens that even that the board agrees, okay, he's got to go. But the time for a shareholder revolt has come and gone. And so just have to accept it.
Yeah, you hear that, Bob Iger? When you were chairman of the board, you could have done your shareholder revolt, and that window has passed, buddy. So if you were going to do that, you should have done that 6 months ago.
Right. And that influence has definitely got to be waning without Peter Rice there, and with Chapek getting full approval of the board. It'll be interesting to see how that story plays out. But Matthew, what did you think about all this? You think we were right here? Do you think reasoning was sound?
Yeah, I think we were probably right. I honestly didn't think Chapek was. I didn't think.
Nope.
Oh, we lost Matthew.
He was. I didn't think there was any prospect of him leaving the company.
Yeah. Now you said that you were a little bit.
I don't know what keeps happening, OG. I think I might just have to.
He might have to connect and reconnect.
I think I might have to switch over to Mike.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there was really no chance. Look, Chapek is making Disney a lot of money right now.
Sure.
I mean, they're making Disney a lot of money, and if they were going to go based on PR, yeah, they wouldn't have renewed his contract, because I think Chapek has kind of dropped the ball on the PR element of this whole thing. But in terms of the money, which the board, that's the prime focus of the board, is making the company money. Disney has excelled in that under Bob Chapek, and I think that you can't deny it. You know, so
I think 2 weeks ago, Matt Belloni wrote an article in Puck suggesting, the makeup of the board, right? How they were all these kind of financial people, financial institutions, all these kind of industry moguls and so forth, and didn't quite know the entertainment business. Well, I mean, if you follow your advice, you might recognize and understand. I think maybe even Belloni was taken aback by this. But you might recognize and understand where the board's head's going to be. It's not going to necessarily be with a lot of the noise, right? They're going to focus on signal. Signal for them is going to be monetary output. It's going to be revenue generation. It's going to be profitability. And I think there is obviously, I don't think the board is too keen on, all of the drama that's going on. But at the same time, it's like Chapek is performing. He is doing the job instructed to do as a CEO, which is make money. And, some of these things might be scrutinized down the line here, but as far as right now, and these things don't happen in a vacuum either. You're looking at, huge volatility in terms of the marketplace and so forth. I mean, just today, actually, this was published yesterday. U.S. economy contracted by 1.6% in the first quarter of 2022. So you're looking at, kind of, I don't want to say dire market conditions, but you're looking at kind of a volatile market and, some inclement weather ahead. Let's just say that. So who do you want to be at the helm of your ship? A guy that's, weathered these storms before, or somebody else who might get praise from the Hollywood types, but might not necessarily be suited to get you through this kind of economic reality that we're all kind of facing here. I think
there is no alternative.
I think he's the best guy for the job right now.
Yeah, as much as it pains me to say it, I honestly think we need someone with good finance knowledge to get us through this. As much as I may dislike Chapek for his lack of creativity compared to Eisner, at least he's frugal.
Yeah,
he is, and Bob Chapek is willing to walk away. Like, here's one thing that I have to commend him on, like with the cricket rights in India, right? Disney lost that whole kind of debate, right? Like they were really working on getting those cricket rights for streaming, and they didn't. They weren't able to grab them. They grabbed the traditional legacy television rights for it, but they didn't grab the streaming rights. And what that shows me is Chapek is willing to walk away from a deal. He's not going to overpay and throw the company into massive debt just to get it. Right, like Bob Iger did with Fox. $70 billion for the X-Men and the Simpsons. Okay, it's
shameful.
Well, and a couple of Avatar sequels, OG. I think you're playing him short here. No, it's outrageous to sum up money. And
honestly,
like you said,
it angers me, Dre.
No, yeah, and it should, because it's like that's a huge amount of capital. And look, with rising interest rates, I don't know if you guys have heard, but rising interest rates on a $40 billion or so of debt, that's a lot of scratch. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna do the math, but 0.75, that's a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a huge
if he
amount.
wasn't chair, that would not have happened at all. But because he's the chair, also, there was just no one to stop him.
And as OG said, he knew he was going to be leaving soon. Couldn't have a loss in the ledger, especially that close to retirement or whatever he's going to be doing. And so he's going to overextend, company, assets and things of this sort, right? Just to kind of get his way. But like OG said, really big of him just to kind of take a step back and say, hey, look, let's not lose our shirt over trying to get streaming rights for, this kind of emerging product in this country, right? We're not going to just lose our head over this. Let's go ahead and just really think about this. And that's really what's gotten, previous divisions of the company, like ESPN, for example, into a lot of trouble, where they spend so much money just to get sports streaming rights or whatever. And it's really kind of hurt their bottom lines as a result. So good on Chapek to kind of just understand the business that he's in and understand that while you can be aggressive, especially in the streaming space, don't lose your head.
100%. And the other thing that you're seeing here with this renewal, this 3-year contract renewal, is the Hollywood, I'm going to call it the Hollywood establishment, because that's really what it is. Let's be honest. The Hollywood establishment is very, very mad right now. And they were very, very mad when Chapek fired Peter Rice too. Well, you know, I saw trade after trade after trade. That's not how we do things in our town. That's not how we do things. We like to keep up appearances. You don't just fire somebody like Peter Rice. You have to give them a backstory. They want to go spend more time with their family and yada, yada, yada. I am so much against that. And I'm against that, number one, because it takes all the accountability out of these executives. If you give them a soft, cushy exit, they have no reason to do a good job. Because if they have the mindset, if a Peter Rice or whoever the executive is, has the mindset that, you know what, no matter what job I do, I'm still going to have the appearance of doing a great job, and I'll always sent off on a very, positive note, I'm just going to go off and spend time with my family. But if they have the worry, the fear in the back of their mind that, you know what, you might just be fired and your reputation might be ruined, well, then the fire is under your ass and you're going to want to perform. So the way Chapek fired Rice tells the entire company, no matter who you are, you will be held accountable for your performance and your behavior. And that's how it should be. It adds an element of accountability. And I like that. I like that a lot. I think all this bullshit in Hollywood about, well, you got to keep up appearances. You hear this on Puck all the time. I read an article from Bologna and all the, oh yeah, you know what? He should have given him Peter Rice a way out and done more like a cushion and kind of soften the blow. Why? If the guy isn't working out, fire him. Get him out of there. It makes no sense. And this is one of the things too. In the political landscape, people are tired of business as usual. That's why Bernie Sanders did so well a few years ago. That's why Donald Trump did so well a few years ago. These perceived outsiders do well because people are tired of the establishment way of doing things. Chapek is not Hollywood. He's not the Hollywood establishment. He's not going to try to keep up appearances. And I think overall people will support that. I think people are tired of the BS. If someone's not working out, fire him. And I think that's the way you got to do it. So, yeah, I think Chapek absolutely made the right moves here, and Hollywood is big mad.
Yeah. And it's consistent with his philosophy. If that's why Chapek was looking to kind of, redo the deals when it came to creatives, right? He was looking for a much more performance-based way of doing things, not just giving them long-term contracts and, hey, your job's set for 10 years, don't even worry about it. No. He's like, listen, you're going to be held accountable for your actions. So you see the way Peter Rice, was fired, it was consistent with his philosophy going back, And I think that philosophy comes from consumer products. Look, listen, in consumer products, you don't get to be whisked off and, have this kind of, fairy tale written about, how, you had to spend time with your family and all that when you were actually let go. It's performance driven. If you didn't sell that product, your ass is gone. So when it comes to, coming from that consumer products mindset, I think he's taken that with him. And for good reason, right? I mean, look, listen, let's be honest here. Some of these creatives, right, they create these products, these movies and so forth that consumer products then have to make products off of. And if that movie doesn't hit, then your division is screwed, essentially, because now you can't sell the toys, you can't sell the merch that you're supposed to. And now, what do you do with that? It's kind of a cutthroat business on their end for sure. And they were getting the scraps, from creatives and all of that. And so he took that kind of accountability philosophy kind of mindset with them. And I think you're right, OG. I think a lot of people are looking for that. Not just people all over the country, but I think the board and all those kind of things. They want an accountable company. They want a profit-focused company and not just, everybody's pet projects and everybody else, has to bear the brunt of it per se.
100%. Ollie, what do you think about that? The way that Chapek kind of went in there and let Peter Rice go, held Peter Rice accountable for whatever he did. We still don't really know what Peter Rice did. We have an idea, undermining Bob Chapek and kind of working behind the scenes and doing all that, but we don't know officially. But what are your thoughts on that? On Chapek's style? What are your thoughts on the Hollywood trades and how they were kind of responding to Chapek? What are your overall feelings on that, Alia?
don't think that's going to be his style with everyone. I think that was his style with Peter Rice because of the rumors of the undermining part of the coup mutiny, so to speak, attempt. I really don't think he's going to, if when there's future firings, unless they're involved with something like that, I don't think that's going to be his firing style. It might be the standard, give them a story or something like that if it's just performance based, etc. But no, if they're involved with undermining him, he's sending a message. This is how you will be treated. And if anything's going to stop that undermining, it's going to be that. And I think that's the message that a lot of the employees got loud and clear. I don't think it's, if my series or if my movie underperforms at the box office or in the streaming ratings, I'm in trouble. This is going to happen to me. I think it's, if I'm involved with a whisper campaign, if I'm involved with sending something to the trades to undermine Chapek, then this is going to happen to me. I think that was what's going on here. And the fact that the trades probably might be really upset, mostly because they lost a great source. Is probably Peter Rice. They're really connected to and totally losing sight of the big picture that here's this, white guy that they were white knighting for, and yet here's now a woman that's been promoted, a black man has been promoted. Hello,
Well, and Ollie, you bring up a fantastic point there, because all we've heard from Hollywood and the mainstream media lift up voices,
break the glass ceiling,
right, break the glass ceiling for women, people of color. Well, Kareem Daniel is one of the most powerful people in Hollywood, thanks to Bob Chapek. He's a black guy. He's a black man.
He is.
He just elevated Dana Walden to one of the most powerful positions. I think, actually, from what I understand, she is the most powerful position ever held by a woman at the Walt Disney Company because of Chapek.
Agreed.
Yep.
Where are all these media outlets that claim they care so much about these groups, women, people of color?
They don't care.
Yeah.
That's exactly it, Matthew. Go ahead and kind of elaborate on
Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing this. Exactly.
They are just trying to vilify Bob Chapek simply because it's too fashionable to do so right now, and simply because Bob Iger was one of the Hollywood elites.
Mm-hmm. He was one of them.
No, he was.
Yeah. And I honestly think, sorry to shift the subject slightly, that video I talked about of Walt Disney's head being unfrozen. Walt Disney shouldn't have been shouting at Bob Chapek. He should have been shouting at Bob Iger.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Look, a lot of this fallout here that Chapek has been kind of saddled with, we talk about it in the context of HB 1557 and the fallout from that, but really he inherited a company that was, let's be honest here. We talked about the Fox acquisition, billions of dollars in debt, right? In terms of cash flow, it's not so good. Obviously, Bob Iger was taking the company in a more political direction, at a time because, he had, I think, presidential aspirations himself. And now Chapek's got to kind of deal with that and kind of get that under check right there. And then let's talk about HB 1557. That was kind of obviously the pretext that was used for a lot of the fallout that happened, with the company and, the how Chapek responded, how the media responded, all that kind of stuff. But, we talk about Peter Rice and, the undermining there. I do agree with you, Aldi. More precisely, I think, yes, while how he was fired was consistent with that philosophy, right? It was definitely for a reason, to send a message. And I think it was all about what happened there. And I think a large part of the criticism aimed at Disney initially for not saying anything about, the bill and all that kind of stuff, I think that definitely came from the Rice camp. Ain't no question about that. And I think that's probably why he was fired, right? Was from that. Now, what's interesting about all of this, right? And what Chapek's had to deal with and all this kind of stuff. And it's, I think another Wall Street analyst said it hasn't been fair. And I do agree, it hasn't been fair.
And that was in a Deadline article. So I think, that's what I meant by there's that acceptance. Okay, he's there for 3 years. Okay, got to accept it now.
Sure. And it's like, he's having to recover from Iger, and I do agree with Matthew. I think, that's where a lot of this blame should be had, not just with Chapek, but when it comes to Chapek and Rice specifically. And Dana Walden, as we have brought her up now, do you think that Dana Walden was involved in Peter Rice's firing and potentially maybe ratting him out and saying, hey, I don't think he's on board here? And maybe that's why Walden was assigned where she was, because not only did she replace Rice as the next logical step, but maybe she earned the trust of Chapek in doing so.
Dre, we had this conversation on the phone last night, and to reiterate, basically for the audience, to reiterate what I said to Dre last night on the phone, that's a very good possibility, because you have to understand something. When you read these trades, Walden and Rice came to Disney as a pair. They were a partnership, right? A business partnership. Okay. And they were very close. Well, obviously the way, like Ollie alluded to, the way that Rice was fired, he obviously did Chapek dirty in some way. It wasn't just like, oh, well, hey, you missed your numbers, buddy. He backstabbed him some way to cut ties early for the board to approve that payout, the 8-figure payout early. He obviously had some sort of shadiness going on there. Now, you would think a guy like Chapek would go, okay, so Rice backstabbed me. Well, here's his number 2 in command, Dana Walden. You would think that she would be on the chopping block too, being that they're so close. But yet she got promoted. So what you're saying, Dre, I think is a very good possibility, is that she was the one that was in Chapek's ear and said, hey, you know what? This guy, Peter Rice, he said this, that, and the other. And here's the evidence. And that's why Dana got the promotion. That's why she's still there. Because otherwise, I think she probably would have been let go of Peter Rice, because she was too close to him. Way too close. What do you think, Ollie, in terms of that?
Interesting idea.
And what's interesting, if so, it might be something where in principle, she might agree with a lot of what the activist employees were saying. She just did not like the undermining, stabbing in the back. I think maybe that really bothered her, and for that reason, she could come forward to Chapek too.
Right.
So,
and she might have ambitions at the top spot too, but it's like, well, it's not going to happen now, but I ain't going to be on the chopping block and maybe not allow for that to happen later. I can get in good with Chapek right now, earn his trust, be a valued ally to whatever he wants to do, and then maybe be considered for the top spot myself. So it's kind of one of those things. I think you have a lot of layers going on here. What do you think about that, Matthew, of the current corporate drama between all the three partners here?
I honestly think Chapek is taking the right stance. He's trying to weed out potential subversives who he thinks might take Disney back to the influence of the Eiger era, because I know deep down he doesn't want Disney to be woke. I've had enough of people just calling him a woke person, because he isn't.
No, you're right. You're right, Matthew. He doesn't want Disney. He doesn't want Disney to be woke, because look, his initial response to the Florida bill was he wants Disney to be neutral. Like that the initial response was the real Bob Chapek. He didn't want Disney to be a political football. He only capitulated and kind of bent the knee and kind of gave in because there was an enormous amount of pressure for him to do so. But at his core, Chapek does not want Disney to go in that direction.
What I think Chapek should have done was just thrown out all of those activists. I know that might have sounded quite cruel, but maybe not the activists, but they should have thrown out a few leaders of those activist movements, like Peter Rice and Dana Walden.
Right. Well, he did. I mean, with Peter Rice, he definitely, because from what I understand, Peter Rice was a big element of the activist movement within Disney. Removing Peter Rice is a big move in that direction. And Disney didn't become a political company overnight, and they're not going to get out of that overnight. And a lot of people that don't want Disney to be, more politically neutral have to understand that it's not going to be like, okay, yesterday they were politically active and today they're not. It's not going to be like that. It's going to take years, just like it took years for us to get here. If Chapek wants the company to get less political, it's going to take years to get out of it. This is a massive company. It's not going to turn on a dime, you know?
Right. And I think the more accurate, kind of framing of what Chapek wants for the company is just less political in general. Not woke, not conservative, not liberal, not whatever. Just a company that can appeal to the largest demographic possible. Sorry, Alia, go ahead.
Oh, I think you mentioned this point once, Dre. I can't remember if it was on a stream or conversation in DMs and all that. Sure. Without a doubt, there's activist employees at Comcast, at Warner Brothers Discovery, and their lack of action, their decisions, etc., obviously have upset these employees. But the reason they don't have a voice is because they haven't received the all clear from someone in C-suite. So it's obvious that the activist employees at Disney felt emboldened because most likely Peter Rice gave them the all clear that it's safe.
And more importantly, Bob Iger.
With the quote tweet. Yes.
Bob Iger, right? Yeah, that was kind of like permission go kind of thing, right? And I think even more accurately than that, what I was hearing was in April, Bob Chapek was going to kind of lay down the law and kind of go, hey, look, listen, I understand that this has been a politically active company up until this point, but for now, we have to go in a more neutral direction. And from what I understand, various people got wind of that and didn't like that, right? And I believe HB 1557 was used as the pretext in order to attempt to stop Chapek from what he was doing or even oust him, right? I think that was the kind of the main goal there. And if it wasn't HB 1557, it would have been anything. Would have been anything at all in order to achieve that goal. And well, unfortunately, that didn't quite work out, I think, in the way that maybe they envisioned. And now it's really kind of interesting because now Chapek, he's been renewed. Now he kind of has a list. And that's going to be...
And he's checking it twice.
And this reminds me, by the way, of a certain time in Disney's history, maybe back in the 1950s, right? Or in the what was it, the 30s? The time of the strike, right? The time of the strike, yeah. I think you're right. I think it was the 30s. The time of the strike where, you had a lot of these, different employees of the company, kind of cross that picket line and kind of strike against what the company was doing at the time, strike against Walt personally, right? And if anybody has followed that story, right, over the next 20 years after that, Walt Disney slowly but surely cast all those people out of the company through various methods and means, right? Well, now, I don't know if anybody's checked, but Chapek has a list. Those people were proud to take photos and do all that and kind of say, hey, we're going to be rebelling against this company.
Right.
Well, those guys, I think they got to be a little worried because I see history repeating itself, and it doesn't look good for these folks.
I think they'll be safe as long as they have a great creative output and they promise they will not do it again. Or they promise it was, I thought it was okay because of Rice, but I'm so sorry. Okay. I think if they're apologetic, I think they'll be safe. It's just Rice, he couldn't give another chance because Rice was either spearheading it or he was following orders from Iger. That was too risky for Chapek to keep him around. But I think anything else, I think he's going to give them a chance.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to dive into a little bit here is so there's this ongoing narrative, and we all know it. If you're on social media, you know the narrative. Chapek bad. Chapek bad. Daddy Josh good is basically the narrative, right?
Right.
And Daddy Josh said hi to me when I was at Epcot or I was at Avengers Campus. Therefore, he's a great executive and can make no mistakes. And Chapek is awkward, so therefore he is stupid and terrible and everything else. This is from Molly.
Yeah, I love
this. Malls Rosebud is her Twitter handle, and she's great. She's fantastic. But she met actually. She had the honor of meeting both men at the same time Demaro and Chapek. And she tweeted this. She says, not to spoil your fun, guys, but Bob is arguably the more personable one and drove a heavy portion of the conversation. Shrug. And then she goes on to say, he's just very friendly and came off very genuine. He was asking all the questions and seemed genuinely interested in talking to me. Josh is very nice, don't get me wrong, but you can tell he has his public persona down to a science and flips it on immediately. And this is the thing. And this isn't like, I'm not trying to like, sort of like,
and someone else commented on that.
Well, I'm not trying to like generalize or whatever, but like the thing is like women have very good intuition in general, right? And they pick up on this stuff. And for Molly to go in there and sort of pick up on the fact that Josh kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of came off very fake, it was an act, and Chapek was genuine is interesting to me. Very interesting. Ollie, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on Molly's tweet?
I think this is great. And my understanding is she was neutral, critical of Chapek at times, but she was just, I have to be honest, and this is my perception, and I have to even relay this and let you know. And somebody else commented on that redemption arc beginning for Chapek, and she was like, maybe. And, I think he's been working on a lot because he knows D23 is around the corner. And so I think this is really, really great to see. When I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
well, yeah, it is awesome. And the thing too is like, people have to be really careful. Like, and my fiance has a good kind of mindset on stuff like this. When someone is kind of too smooth, your antenna should go up.
Yeah.
And she told me the same thing about Bob Iger, and same thing applies, I think, with Daddy Josh. When someone is too smooth and they're just, it comes off a little used car salesman-y, right?
Yeah, it really does. It's like you're watching, those old Toyota commercials from the 70s and 80s hosted by, Squire Friedel. It was like watching those commercials.
Right. Exactly, Matthew. Exactly. And it's just like, look, I'm not trying to disparage Demaro, right?
Exactly.
I'm sure
it's fine if people like him, but give Chapek a chance. See these accounts, ponder over it. Give, Molly a chance here, because some were trying to debate her about it. And you should have confronted him. And she's just like, well, if you cross paths with him, you do it,
Right. And Molly is an interesting case here, because Molly had the chance to meet both men at the same time. See, it's one thing to meet Bob Chapek one day, and then 6 months from now you meet Demaro, right? Well, your comparison capabilities are a little bit off because it's been such a long time between the two meetings.
Excellent point. This is the exact same time.
She met them at the exact same time. So she was able to compare these two men in real time at the same time. And what she walked away with was basically Demaro, kind of fake. He turns it on a dime. Chapek, maybe while awkward, and maybe
genuine.
We'll go on about with a bunch of dad jokes and weird awkward humor. Felt more real to her, and that's fascinating. What do you think, Dre, in terms of this?
No, I think the points made are very astute observations. I mean, it's a very rare occasion when you get two executives like this side by side, and you can kind of evaluate them, direct comparison, so to speak. And it's a really kind of interesting thing because we've heard from a number of people, Daddy Josh, he's the smooth guy, he's so personable, and he'll ask you about your day and all that kind of stuff. But she was able to evaluate and go, kind of was like an act, kind of looked like he was turning that on a little bit, and maybe he wasn't as genuine as maybe people had kind of assumed or thought. But Chapek on the opposite, end of that, came off far more genuine to her, and it was just kind of fascinating to hear because it was just like, wow, we don't really hear that too often, especially in the context between the two. We hear the exact opposite, but she was able to evaluate and say, no, he was really genuine. He really wanted to know kind of how my day was. Told me I should be a cast member, I think is what she said, later on down the line there in that conversation. And it was just it was really kind of revealing and kind of, I don't know, it wasn't consistent with the narrative that people are putting out there about that. And we had this kind of conversation, and if there's one kind of thing that we could tell Chapek is just kind of like, be yourself, do what you think is best. Don't stop trying to be like Iger. Ain't nobody's gonna be like Iger. It's kind of like if you were to tell Trump, try to be like Obama. That's not gonna work. Okay, that's not going to. It's not gonna happen.
But if you. Guy.
Yeah, be your own dude. And OG, I think you put it perfectly. That guy around the dinner table, Yeah. That kind of young man from Indiana, that kind of blue collar, kind of like, is okay with getting his kind of, hands dirty, his kind of sleeves up, and kind of can be personable on that level, I think is the best modality for him. Might not be the best modality for Bob Iger, but for him, I think it's the best way going forward. And I think he does feel maybe a little bit more comfortable. Again, I think he was in Florida at that point, leading up to this kind of board member retreat that they are, having currently right now. I think he kind of understood he was going to get renewed. And I think, from all of this kind of noise, from all of this kind of media circus that we've been seeing, what's the worst that can happen to him? Maybe he feels differently coming into the role where he's like, I don't want to screw up. Now it's like, hey, you know what? People are going to think of me what they're going to think of me. I've already screwed up. I'm going to get renewed here. Maybe I should just kind of relax and kind of be comfortable in my own skin. And I think that was reflected there with that meeting, that tweet.
Yeah, 100%. And he, like, here's the thing. It's like, you're right. He needs to be his own guy, right? Like, and Bob Iger understood this. When Bob Iger came to the role, he didn't try to be Michael Eisner. Like, Bob Iger didn't go in there with the Mickey Mouse tie and the Mickey Mouse hat and the Disneyland sweater. Bob Iger came in and was like, okay, I'm going to be my own dude. I'm going to be the Tony Stark, billionaire philanthropist of the Disney Company. I'm not going to be Michael Eisner, right? And it worked for Bob Iger. It worked for him. And that was his thing, his niche, his whole kind of image. I think that Chapek needs to come in there and create his own niche. Get off the teleprompter. And like you said, Dre, be that blue collar guy, and just be that guy around the table that tells dad jokes that are not funny. But you know what? It's still funny because, you think they're funny. You're like that kind of guy, right? Be that guy, because I know that's who he is. If you ask his wife or his kids, I'm sure they can tell you a million stories about how great Chapek is. Just be that guy. And I think Molly kind of saw a little bit of that guy. And I think that the rest of the world and the fandom needs to see more of that guy. Hopefully, Christina Shockey and the people kind of handling D23 Expo, please let Bob Chapek just be Bob Chapek and get him off the prompter, at least a little bit. I know there's a necessity to have a little bit of that in there for sure, but just let him be Bob Chapek. Because I think if the fandom and the public saw the real Bob, I think they'd like him a lot more than currently. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may say something about Josh D'Amaro, I just sent you another tweet by this user called The Liberal Leopard, who basically just goes out of their way to debunk the whole Daddy Josh narrative. And it reads as follows. It describes D'Amaro as the guy who sees Walt Disney World cast members getting paid less than team members at Universal Orlando. He does nothing but act as a shield for Bob Chapek, and he's earned it. His main talents are schmoozing like Bob Iger did by having good looks and charisma, and flying under the radar just so everyone can keep pushing the bold man bad narrative.
Interesting.
So D'Amaro is overseeing the decline of Disney parks. That's what the Liberal Leopard's trying to say.
Well, yeah, and he is the guy running the fucking parks. And that's the thing that drives me crazy, is that no one holds the guy running the parks accountable for the parks.
Promising, what was it, Carly? She called him out, and she's a prominent voice on Twitter. So
right,
yes, Carly,
you can retweet it if you want, OG.
Yeah, it's just crazy that, and we're starting to see more of it. More people are calling him out, which is fantastic. Yeah. He should be held accountable for the job he's doing. And it's too easy. It's too easy to sort of like, oh, well, it's just Chapek. Oh, it's just Chapek. Chapek
But they
doesn't
didn't do
run
that
good-
with Iger when Iger
Didn't
was
do that with
CEO.
Iger.
So
Mhm.
they were
not.
consistent, great. But if they were not, then it's, I can't really listen to you. You're not being
Right. They
consistent.
didn't do that with Bob Iger. When Chapek was running the parks from 2015 to 2020, it was all on Chapek. Any cut from Galaxy's Edge or anything else was Bob Chapek. Now he became the CEO, and suddenly now the CEO has everything to do with the parks, and he's to blame for everything. Well, that wasn't the case in 2015.
And tomorrow has to walk on eggshells. Yeah, I saw that presented as a viewpoint. It's like, no.
It's crazy.
Well, then Chapek had to walk on eggshells with Iger. I mean, come on.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Chapek had to answer to Bob Iger. And that's the thing, too, is all the things that the parks fans hate right now, the reservation system, Genie Plus, and all that stuff started when Bob Iger was CEO. If Bob Iger was all about the people and the fans, how come Bob Iger didn't put a stop to that? I mean, he was a CEO. He was Chapek's boss. Why didn't he do anything about it? He did nothing because he agreed with the decisions.
Yeah, so in my opinion, the book, in my opinion, for everything that happened in the Eiger era stopped with Iger.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And for everything that happened in the Eisner era, however, the book stopped with Wells. Because had Wells not gone on that holiday, had he made it home in one piece, maybe he wouldn't have died. Maybe he would have still been able to run the company for a few more years.
That's a huge what if for us for the.
Although even then, he would have had to retire anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I miss Frank Wells dearly, and I miss Howard Ashman. We lost a lot of great people at Disney in the 90s. We really did. Now, I want to let the conversation continue. I have to actually get back to work. But I want you guys to continue the conversation about Chapek and everything, because I think there's a lot to dive into here. Like Vash and Matthew, I know you guys were talking about like Disney Plus and the priority over the parks or vice versa.
Yes.
If you guys want to dive into that too, that'd be fantastic. I'm going to head out. I want to thank everybody for watching. Continue to watch. Vash, Alia, and Matthew. I'm going to head out, but thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you so much, OG. Thank you. But yeah, no, you're exactly right. You guys are exactly right. Josh D'Amaro has gone way under the radar, and it's just completely 100% unfair. I mean, I always cite the Lake Nona thing. The Lake Nona thing was universally hated, not even just from people inside the company, but people outside as well. People were really kind of, despondent over it. I'll say, even, guests, fans, whatever. And I just think back and I go, well, that original memo or that original statement put out there was put out by Josh D'Amaro himself. And yet Chapek still earns all the ire and everybody obfuscates and everybody just, points the blame game around to Chapek. It's absolutely ridiculous. D'Amaro signed that paperwork. He authored that letter and sent it out there, and now they're pulling back on that, and that's just it's just a mess. But I'm glad that this kind of notion of like holding Josh D'Amaro's feet to the fire is actually kind of coming around, because it was a while there where, man, you could not even speak ill of Daddy Josh for fear of retribution. So it's a very interesting thing that's happened.
I think this whole narrative's insane.
Well, and it's funny because, Diz Twitter and the kind of Disney Parks fan community or the Disney community, we like to point to certain individuals, right, and kind of put the onus on them, blame on them, or all of the accolades on them or whatever, when really there's a lot of people that make a lot of decisions, right? And to put it all on Chapek, especially coming from the Parks division, I don't think is necessarily proper. I think a lot has to do, the changes that we're seeing and so forth. A lot of that has to fall on Josh D'Amaro and the various executive heads that kind of run these parks and these divisions, which don't get a lot of scrutiny or a lot of criticism. But it's particularly fascinating. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just that there's just this narrative of, even with that letter, Josh had to do it. He he couldn't say no. He had to do it. Well, then when Iger was CEO, why didn't you give that same grace to Chapek? That maybe all these things that you despise, he had to do it. He had no choice.
Maybe he had to. Maybe he didn't have a choice. Maybe it was like, hey, Galaxy's Edge isn't getting made unless we make these certain amount of cuts. It could have been possible. From what I have heard, it was Chapek that did those kind of things, but maybe there was a pretext for those kind of things. Maybe Iger was saying, hey, look, listen, we got to contain some costs. Maybe we got to do what we got to do here. And hey, maybe Chapek lowered down the axe, but he was getting orders. Yeah, who knows?
And what we know of Iger's personality now, he knew the criticism Chapek was getting, but he wasn't going to come out and rescue him. I did it. It was my decision. Chapek could take the ball. So.
No, it was all about Bob Iger. It wasn't about Disney. It was just about Iger.
Yeah, and I wanted to actually bring that point up here because we kind of touched on it before, but it was all about Iger. I mean, somebody said to me, it was like, hey, maybe the problem was Iger, all this time. And it's like, yeah, it was the meme with the two astronauts. And it's like, wait, Iger was the problem this whole time? And the other guy's like, always has been. Honestly, that's kind of true. Now, Matthew and I were talking before the show about kind of the decline of Iger and when that kind of happened. I think a lot of people, I think you, Matthew, even said too, that you kind of see 2012 as kind of like the beginning of the decline for maybe Iger.
That was the big turning point when he was granted the joint position of both CEO and chairman of the board, which no CEO prior to him had been granted. I don't even think it happened in the period between Walt's death in 1966 and Eisner and Wells being recruited by Roy Disney in 1984. Roy E. Disney, that is, not Roy O. Disney.
Right. I think there have been some executive shuffles, but nobody had been in command of the Disney company at that level, at that scale, at that size. No. Before the Eisner era,
Michael Eisner.
Yeah. Before the Eisner era, they were a very kind of small, kind of family company, if you want to put it that way, kind of studio, and they were number 12 of 12 kind of thing. They were kind of far on the list, but Eisner took them to a scale hitherto undreamt of, if I can quote Dr. Strange right there, right? just to remarkable levels, and Iger building that foundation. And when you have all of the cylinders firing on this massive machine, and you give that over to somebody with just absolute power and control, we have a saying here in the States there, Matthew, that absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that might have been starting to take place even back then. And unfortunately, the company has kind of paid for it in some respects. And I was talking this with OG. I don't know if you guys feel the same way about this, but every single time, I mean, part of the perception about the Eiger era and how, good it may have looked on paper, a lot of that was maybe rose-colored glasses over these various acquisitions that he made. And it kind of felt like every single time there was a lull or a point at which, he was trying to solve a problem or whatever, he would kind of buy his way out of it. Do you guys see that in some way?
I don't think it really applies with Marvel, but we're definitely with Lucasfilm and especially with Fox.
Yeah. Alia?
Scott Mendelsohn kind of touched on that in a recent column. I think it was about Lightyear, that he said that, yes, Bob Iger accomplished a lot, and a lot of it's because of the acquisitions, but he failed to really nourish and create a homegrown IP, so to speak. The last most successful one, he pointed out, was Pirates of the Caribbean franchise and National Treasure. And there hasn't been anything since then that was, and he's not counting the live action remakes of the animated features. Even though that's not acquisition, it's kind of building on what you had. And yes, true, Pirates of the Caribbean is based on attraction, but that's a little bit more of a unique concept than redoing an animated feature. Sure. But he just said that was Iger's mistake and fault to not really nourish that with the studios.
I'd even go one step further and say a lot of, National Treasure, I think National Treasure, but definitely Pirates of the Caribbean. He inherited those. So it was just, kind of building on those kind of
he
things.
He didn't even
right?
start those, yeah.
Didn't even start those per se. I have to look at the timeline of National Treasure, but I think I'm correct on that as well. But, he tried with John Carter, and that failed miserably. Tron as well.
So then he bought Lucasfilm.
Then he got Marvel and Lucasfilm, right? And I think where he started that kind of mentality was in a good place, right? I think he recognized and understood that the animation side of the business hadn't been firing on cylinders for a while leading up to that point. And it was like, okay, well, we do have an animation studio that we've done business with, being Pixar, that has done unbelievable business, and how our guests of today really resonate with their stories and so forth. And since we have so much IP in our parks already, we might want to bring them into the fold. Whereas maybe Eisner wasn't maybe sympathetic with that idea, right? He didn't quite.
Isn't it what helped convince him of that? Is that when shortly after he became CEO, he was at what was it? One
Hong
of the
Kong
parks,
Disneyland.
Okay, and there was a parade, and he saw how excited people were when the Pixar creators, the
Right.
Pixar characters went through, and he's like,
Yeah, he's like, we got to bring him into the fold here. I mean, these people are reacting to these characters in a way that ours are simply not resonating. And if he could duplicate that effect throughout, not just the animation side of the company, but throughout various sectors of the company, then they would be in a much better position for the creative output I think that Bob Iger was looking for. But again, that was following kind of Michael Eisner and having to deal with them, and just kind of putting it into those negotiations.
With Eisner and Pixar and
so
there's was some drama thing that was going on there.
So they entered into an exclusive kind of partnership distribution deal with Disney. Pixar did, leading up to the first Toy Story, right? And then kind of built on that going forward. But I think they kind of felt that they were kind of being not necessarily recognized for their achievements, and not being not the deals that were structured were very beneficial to Disney, and I think there wasn't the reciprocity that I think Pixar felt that they could get a little bit more. I think Steve Jobs especially felt that Pixar could get more and more recognition and that kind of thing. And they were kind of thinking about maybe not going with Disney going forward, maybe going with somebody else. And obviously that couldn't happen, so Michael Eisner came to the table with Steve Jobs and some of the other Pixar executives, and he just couldn't, they were asking for too much in his opinion, and just ended negotiations from right there. Well, following that immediately, Iger is kind of sworn in, as it were, right? And he's, for lack of a better term, made CEO, takes the reins, and obviously it's like that's one of his first orders of duty, as it were, right, to figure this kind of whole thing out. And that was a deciding factor in that whole thing, was that Hong Kong visit, going, hey, we got to bring these people into the fold and do it on a permanent basis. But also that brain trust is really where the value's at. It's not necessarily for the content that they're going to, that they have produced or will produce. It's the people there. And if we can infuse that talent into the various divisions of the company, we'll be really, really at a good place. And so when he negotiated with Steve Jobs and the rest of them, it was in a much different headspace, and I think Michael Eisner had approached it, because I think he understood the value of what Pixar brought to the company in a way that maybe Michael Eisner didn't initially recognize. Well, he just applied that towards other acquisitions, right? Marvel was a good one, and I think he was looking for a real win with live action in a way that they had never really kind of cracked the code on that before. Did it at a perfect time, right before Avengers comes out, makes a huge amount of money, and they're off to the races, right? I think what screwed him up, though, starting with Lucasfilm, was I believe that he saw those as, turnkey operations, right? It's Pixar's making tons of money producing its own films, right? Marvel's doing the same thing. Lucasfilm's probably going to be in a similar state. And it just wasn't. They hadn't produced a feature film in 10 years leading up to The Force Awakens, right? They were not in the state at which they could facilitate year-over-year box office releases.
That's true. They weren't in feature film mode. The other verticals were. They were when they were actively creating things, but
Pixar, sure, yeah,
and Marvel, but that's true. Lucasfilm was kind of on the back burner with that.
Right. You had THX, you had ILM, and they were creating content for films.
Companies, yeah.
Right, but they were not a production house, so to speak. Yeah, like you said, their verticals were doing stuff, but not in-house, not for their own making. And I think Iger and the rest of Disney leadership underestimated just how much work really needed to be done at that level before they started producing, film after film after film.
And I think what hurt Lucasfilm was when they took away the outline or the treatment that George Lucas had in mind for the sequel trilogy. They should have. I think that would have been a great foundation and building block. But I think they took the rug out from underneath Lucasfilm when they removed that. They're like, start from scratch.
Well, and you see, this is when the ego comes in. This is when the Iger's like, I know best. I've seen your prequels. They weren't lauded, universally, right?
Yeah, and they're just beloved, though.
Well, now they are, but at the time, they were looked at much differently. Right. And I, from what I understand, he looked at the treatments and he saw a lot of the same things and said, I don't think we're necessarily going to go in this direction. What worked? A New Hope, episode 4 back in 1977. That worked. And I think the charge was, hey, J.J. Abrams, make that.
That's true. Force Awakens is a beat for beat. It follows the beats of New Hope.
Right, exactly. Which isn't the worst idea in the world, right? If you're going to relaunch a franchise, do it with something that feels familiar to it, but also kind of builds off that and kind of sets you in a direction where you can build from there.
They should have reunited, though, the OT characters and then kind of introduce the new, and then the new take off with the second and the third film. But the original character should have been the focus for the Force Awakens.
Exactly.
Together.
Right.
So
100%. And people have talked about...
That was the mistake they made. So
people have talked about Cobra Kai and how they handled these kind of reboots and stuff like that. It's like, start with the characters that are established, that everybody knows,
Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. And you can introduce new characters. Ain't nobody saying that you can't. Top Gun Maverick, great example, right? You have new characters in there that provide compelling narratives, maybe even for future films. But who do we want to see right now? We want to see Tom Cruise. We want to see that F-18. We want to see it fly. Han Solo, they want to see him in the Millennium Falcon, and Luke with his X-Wing and so forth.
And not
right?
separate, but together.
And together, right? And we never... It's still crazy to me that we never got that opportunity. Such a waste opportunity. I mean, nobody had the ability to bring all of these characters that we loved together in this way. Only Disney was able to do that. And to get Harrison Ford back, I mean, that took a little... it took a little schmoozing to do that. But it's like you had them. And you never brought them together on screen once.
Yeah, it's very sad that they didn't.
Extremely sad, and it was such a missed opportunity. And it's those kinds of things that I don't think... It's like they were too smart, like they outthought themselves. Like, what we're gonna do is gonna be so much better than anything that's come before. You just wait and see. We got to launch it now, and not understanding why people showed up in the theater to begin with. And then once you lost them there, then it just became diminishing returns after that. I think, especially the kind of tone set with Last Jedi and so forth, which was really unfortunate. But that was the kind of hubris, I think, the start of the hubris that Iger had. And
I love The Last Jedi. It's just, I think it would have been more accepted if The Force Awakens reunited the original, the OT characters instead of separate scenes. They were like reunited.
Right. I do agree. And I think with those legacy characters, I think you could have even taken some risks after having satiated and satisfied the people in the first one, to your point. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And there was a backlash and as we saw, diminishing returns from every single subsequent Star Wars film until now,
They're scared.
We haven't.
almost.
Well, right. We haven't even seen hints of production starting on any of these future projects, and that's all the way from Solo. So Solo comes out in what, 2018 or 2018, right?
2018.
Rise of Skywalker comes out in 2019, and we haven't heard a peep from anything from Lucasfilm. From this point on. Obviously, Indiana Jones 5 is coming out next year, but no hint at any Star Wars films.
They have that 2023 Rogue Squadron film penciled in, but even the other studios are like, they're starting to schedule things around there because they're not buying it.
Yeah, exactly. I love to. I see a lot on Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter, but Frank Marshall and everybody's putting out there, only 1 year away from Indy 5, attempting to convince people that, it's not going to be delayed again. Don't worry, it's coming out. And it's like, it's been delayed, 3-4 times now? And
it would just be best if they stay silent. And then once it's really, really certain, we're a few months out, the trailer. But right now, it's just looking a little...
It's white noise.
It's white noise, exactly, man. And it's just, we need to see some production. We need to see some fruits of all this talk and all this kind of stuff. And I think there is a faction within Lucasfilm that is attempting to get there, right? I think this kind of Mandoverse is kind of going towards a feature film of its own. But again, that's going to take time. It's going to take energy. And
that's
I think
least probably 5 years away or something.
Probably. At least, I would say at least 3, assuming they start development right now. But yeah, probably most likely 5. But that's kind of the start of Iger and kind of just like not, and he would even admit to it. Like, he even said, buck stops with me when it comes to Star Wars. We made some mistakes, yada, yada, yada. But and then you have the 20th Century Fox deal, even the Shanghai Disneyland deal, which apparently was going to be when Shanghai Disneyland opened. That was going to be his initial send off, ooh, I'm on top, I built a park, see ya. But contract extensions and all that kind of stuff, he stays on. And unfortunately, the Fox
That's
deal
another
happens.
big what if. What if he retired? The big what ifs with Disney are, what if Walt Disney didn't die when he did? What if Frank Wells did not die when he did? What if Howard Ashman did not die when he did? And what if Iger retired when he originally said he would retire?
Exactly.
Yeah, you said
exactly. 100%. And I know Matthew plays with those what ifs quite frequently. But here's a what if I want to spring onto you now. And I think, yes, Iger has a lot to do with the fall, right? But I think content production also took a hit in terms of the hits and notable successes from these studios. And a lot of that has to do, maybe, with Lasseter. What if Lasseter wasn't driven off the company like he was he eventually was?
The way other talent now and studios are working with him with Skydance, it's almost to the point, why did Disney receive so much criticism to fire him when now everybody's acting like nothing happened? Because you're always you're always reading these headlines in the trades, blah 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 signed up with Skydance Animation, and Skydance also distributes with other studios, and he's connected with that, but with the animation division, the studio signed up. Paramount's Top Gun Maverick is a Skydance production distributed by Paramount. So, right. So it's just what he did was awful, but it's frustrating that Disney received so much pressure to fire him, and then the rest of Hollywood is not supporting that decision. That is what is frustrating.
Yes, which leads me to believe that he was removed in the way that he was because I think people felt that he was a gatekeeper, that he was going to stand in the way to maybe some of the politicization that's happened.
That I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's just that was the, with Me Too and all that, that was the mentality. But then, Hollywood memories are short and money talks, and
it's an interesting thing. I've had the opinion for a while that well, obviously, when the Me Too movement started, I think it's started in a very good place, and in a place that needed to happen for Hollywood. Long overdue.
Definitely.
Long overdue. But I think it was weaponized at a certain point to get rid of Hollywood establishment figures, let's say, that I think we're going to be in the way of maybe some decisions going forward as Hollywood continues to grow and expand and evolve.
There's an interesting rumor, though, that Disney might buy Skydance.
I have heard that, which is hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious to think about. Because look, when Lasseter goes,
they have Top Gun.
they would have Top Gun. But when Lasseter goes, right, it's not only just loss of him, he collects all of these other players. Not just from within Disney, but also, hey, I heard back in like 2017, 2016, 2018, around those times, that a lot of people coming fresh out of animation school were like, Disney or Skydance? I'm going to go to Skydance. They absorbed a lot of talent just based off of...
Chapek knows this.
Exactly. 100%, right? Because Lasseter was such an influential force. I mean, some people probably went to animation school just inspired from John Lasseter's story. So the chance to work with him on the ground floor of this animation studio that, obviously because Lasseter is a part of it, probably has sky-high potential.
On Disney Plus, The Making of Lightyear, there's a lot of focus on Lasseter. So there's
there
almost
really?
like this, yes. So there's almost like this interesting, you do under the behind the scenes, yes. If Chapek knowing all this is just, I'm not willing to villainize him anymore, kind of thing.
Exactly. 100%. And so he has absorbed all kinds of talent, not just from within Disney's ranks, obviously as a lasting force and legacy within Disney, but also he's absorbed talent from all over the place. And now people, they're working with him. Luck is going to come out soon, which I believe is Skydance Animation's first production.
It's going to go to Apple TV.
Apple TV, right. And it's like...
They do report their numbers to Nielsen, so that will be interesting to see.
Ooh, well, that will be interesting to see, because that's, I mean, I saw the trailer. It looks fun. So we'll have to see on that, obviously, but I think there's a void there. That I don't know. I look at Pete Docter and I go, okay, great director, obviously. Is he the best executive? What does he look like without Lasseter? And it's kind of been a little bit of this, right? And I'm not going to say that things were,
perfect with Lasseter.
Perfect no. Good Dinosaur, I think you could all point to, right? Cars 2, right? But man, we've never really had a failure like Lightyear. And I just kind of wonder, what if? That's the question I posed to y'all.
And if Chapek is really asking that, then there might be, where there's smoke, there's fire. There might be validity to those rumors that Disney's interested in buying Skydance.
Maybe. I mean, because look, listen, if we're following the pattern, right? Right now, the creative force at Disney is a little like this, right? It's there's obviously still creating hits in the various studios, but it's not maybe necessarily at the level that Chapek feels that it could be. Mm-hmm. And if you want to infuse talent in the company, what better way than to do that with an acquisition of Skydance, especially at the level where they're at? It wouldn't be so cost prohibitive, and yet you have this kind of brain trust that's kind of encircling Lasseter that you can kind of infuse into the company at a point which it probably needs a little bit of that. It probably needs a little bit of, I don't know, maybe a veteran mindset.
Because I think his idea of the creatives of the different verticals meeting and the creative vertical brain trust, that's a good idea. And I don't think that's really, we haven't seen productions as the result of that. That was kind of what Chapek wants to do. So that's a good idea. But yes, also because I know each vertical has a brain trust, but Chapek wanted a brain trust among the verticals. So.
Right. And I think, I'm not saying that they should, bring back Lasseter, but the thing about Lasseter was he was in a position.
They will.
Well, that's true. But Lasseter, he was in a position that can kind of look over all the content, contribute in ways, and and kind of shore things up, as he saw fit and stuff like that. I almost think that Disney might need kind of that creative force, that tour de force, just to kind of oversee all of the content production and go.
Wasn't the rumor that would be Jon Favreau? Or?
That was the rumor. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be Lasseter. I think it could be a Jon Favreau or some other person who can kind of balance out the business with the creative.
They understand both sides of the brain, so to speak.
Both sides of the brain, but also understand what the audience might be looking for as well. So it's kind of that whole kind of thing. And I think Jon Favreau would be perfect for that. What do you think about that, Matthew?
I think Jon Favreau would be a very good studio executive alongside the likes of Kevin Feige, because he's been very good at helming the Marvel company. Yeah, and I actually think Marvel is probably Disney's strongest IP at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I just saw the comment from OG55 here in the background in the green room. Plus, bringing Lasseter back would be a symbolic middle finger to Iger. Chapek might be interested in that. That's a good... That's a good reason as any to bring back somebody, right?
And people can't really criticize the decision because we're not hearing or reading any criticism of all these people signing up to work with Lasseter.
Exactly. One of Iger's, I think, biggest mistakes was not defending Lasseter as outwardly as he probably could have. Not fighting for him, because I think the board was like, listen, we're gonna part ways here. I think Iger could have put up a better fight than he did, but he didn't, and he let that talent go out the door.
And I think Lasseter was very good at. Sorry, Ali. I was just going to say that Lasseter was very good at trying to usher in a new era of films in like 2007 and 2008, because around that time, much of Disney's output was just cheaply made direct-to-video sequels like Cinderella 3 and The Little Mermaid 3, but they were just rollover residual stuff from the Eisner era. So Lasseter definitely needs to come back, because he could usher in a new era of creativity.
It's an interesting idea. Go ahead.
I kind of understood it. The allegations were serious, and as we mentioned, the Me Too. It's just hindsight being 2020. Now that we're seeing Hollywood just kind of whatever, I'm going to sign up and work with Lasseter. It's all moot, really. It's just.
And it's an interesting point. OG makes an additional comment here. Iger was more interested in setting the table to run for president as a Democratic nominee. Lasseter had to go to give Iger that Me Too clout. It's an interesting idea.
That's true. Iger was centrist, really, until he wanted to run for president, I think.
Correct. And a lot of people believe that because he wanted to run for president, he had to take Disney in a more political direction in order to be consistent with that.
Whereas what he really should have done is just resign, and I'm going to, run for president now and just let Disney go its way,
Right. I 100% agree. Let Disney go their way, become this kind of, presidential figure, right? And be autonomous from Disney in a way, and say, hey, look, and you could even say, hey, I drove Disney to success, right? I can do it for the country. I think that would be kind of a unifying message even. But he didn't decide to do that. He decided to kind of get on the what is it, the the political train, so to speak, take the company with him, and c'est la vie. I mean, everything happens after that, and it was an unfortunate thing. And to OG's point here, we heard that even from like the Johnny Depp trial, how a lot of people kind of got onto the train because of the Me Too train, I should say, and did things that maybe they wouldn't have done before. Because certain allegations were out there, and because the climate was so tumultuous at that point, executives felt that they had no choice, and that could have influenced that decision to get rid of people like Lasseter as well. It was quite the time, and we can kind of look back on that, and
I hate it when important things are abused. It's just it dilutes it. So I hate that.
It does. I completely agree with you. I think there was some really good changes that were, maybe coming with the kind of Me Too movement sweeping through, and maybe Hollywood would have been for the better, but because it was, I think, tainted, like you said, Ollie, I think it really undermined that whole thing and made it something that it wasn't supposed to be, and that's really unfortunate. And some people got caught up in the crossfires.
And that's giving both sides more ammunition for the ongoing culture war we're experiencing.
Yeah. And the culture war within Disney right now. From what I understand, we talk about the Eiger era and the residuals from that. From what I understand, there's like the California cast members on a different wavelength than the Floridian cast members. That's
interesting.
That's from what I understand, that's an emerging dynamic that's come about with the kind of the fallout from March and beyond. Something I was just getting information on leading up to this show, actually, that there's a little bit of a divide there, even going on within Disney, and it's going to be fascinating to see how Chapek turns that around, because I think that might be instrumental in the company's success going forward. But
then again, his competition is making things easy. The activist employees really don't have anywhere to go, because Universal Comcast with their action or lack of action with something, a lot of things, WBD with their action or lack of action with a lot of things. So Netflix too. So if they go to the competitors, it's hypocrisy. It's just for money. Sorry, Matthew, go ahead.
And that's why Chapek had no need to take a stand with the Don't Say Day vehicle in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, I think where Chapek was at the time that whole thing was going, I mean, he had that shareholders meeting, which he was going to receive live calls on.
The timing was just
happens like a day, 2 days after the Senate passes the bill. And it's like, of course, he's going to field these calls. He's going to field these questions about what they should have done at that point. And again, as we said earlier on this show, maybe he was put in that position on purpose, but that's a whole nother story, right? But he's kind of got his back against the wall, and I think he has to capitulate at some level because of that additional scrutiny. Some people are saying 4D chess, maybe that was all intentional by him and to show that they were wrong and all that kind of stuff. I don't really buy that. It has worked out in his favor now following his extension, but at that time, I think he has to capitulate on some level, because he's like I said, he's backed up in this corner where he's going to be receiving live calls, and the first thing that's going to come out of people's mouths is, why isn't the company taking this stance or another? It was an unfortunate series of events that I think undermined not only him but also his vision for the company going forward. And I think now with this contract extension, I think now he has additional leverage, right? We've seen Netflix now, they are on their second purge. They first purged, I think, about 250 employees. Now they purged another 300 employees, right? David Zaslav has... well, I mean...
I know. People call Chapek cheap. Zaslav makes Chapek look like a big spender.
Exactly, 100%. And he has told executives himself, hey, go hit the bricks kind of thing. So... we're seeing massive changes from throughout the industry. And so now Chapek has a little bit of leverage that he didn't previously have before. As you astutely pointed out, Alia, people, to leave, they would have to do it for the money. Because right now, I don't think you're going to see the ideological landscape has definitely changed. And especially as we're seeing with movies like Top Gun and underperforming movies like Lightyear, I think the executives from those various studios are looking at that as well and going, this is the direction maybe we need to necessarily go. Not one that's politically charged, but one that's maybe a little bit more neutral on that front, but maybe more profit driven. And
centrist. And if it's politically charged, then probably things will receive a smaller budget. But
right,
you can't, the big budgets, that's just going to be more centrist, mainstream. So
if you're
four quadrant,
exactly 4 quadrant films, if we're producing things that go over 120, 150, $200 million, it's going to be a 4 quadrant film. that's just the economics of it. That's just the economic reality of the marketplace. But I think you have a kind of a Hollywood system that's changing, right? And I think Chapek is like, hey, look, this is interesting. If we could maybe predict what's going to happen going forward here a little bit. I'm hearing rumors that Chapek is maybe looking to reinvest into the parks, maybe sooner than maybe he anticipated. Obviously, we've heard...
That will really make just Twitter happy.
Well, yes, it would. But the reality is like, look, the parks are making money. You know, I mean, we don't have to take these big swings of, hey, Lightyear comes out, underperforms, now we have $300 million that we had to, you know, scrape the checkbook and find where that money's going to come from or whatever. The parks are consistently making money. And in this more economic volatile time, it's like, do I put $30 billion towards a streaming service that will eventually become successful, or a studio system that might be up or down, or do I take some of that money and invest it into the product that's consistently making money for us quarter after quarter?
Oh, so if anything, the data and all that is supporting that decision. That's why he's looking that way. And so...
Exactly. And I think it makes financial sense. Mm-hmm. Moreover, you can look at, you know, we talked about the budgets towards filmmaking, right? 4 quadrants versus if you're going to have politically charged content, maybe it doesn't get the biggest budget. You can go to them and say, hey, look, listen, you either make a film that's 4 quadrant, or I'm taking your budget and I'm putting it towards the parks. Because those things are making money. Either you get on the train or you're going overboard. And I think that's kind of where we're at right here. I think Chapek, now unimpeded from Iger, he's got Rice's, the monkey that is Rice off his back.
And his allies,
it's gonna be a new
they're
Chapek.
either probably resigning or they'll get terminated, or they're just, okay, I'm shaping up now, I promise.
100%. I think this is a new Chapek. He's got 3 years. I think he's more emboldened than ever,
mm-hmm.
and with the least amount of restrictions he's ever had.
And I think that's what the board wanted to see, because yes, like we talked about, he didn't really have a fair hand. And so that's why I thought unless he resigns, he's going to get renewed, because there was just so many variables that were not fair to him. And maybe they could have given him like a year extension, but yeah, I think we want to see you really spread your wings now. Show us what you can do. So
I agree. And listen, as Susan Arnold pointed to, hey, he got us through the pandemic, right? That's only going to get you so far. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Now it's time to perform.
And that statement was pretty much that to him now.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, yes, we're going to enter a recession, and they're going to be fair comparing Disney's performance with peers like Comcast, et cetera, and Wall Street as a whole. But yes, Arnold and the board are pretty much saying to Chapek now, yes, we understand, but we're all looking forward now. Prove yourself. Exactly.
100%. And like I said, because of that whole thing, hey, you got us through one economic disaster. Maybe you can do it again. I think he is the best person for this role at this time. Maybe he's not when everything's going well and everything's booming and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, I think he's the best call. Matt, do you agree with me? Am I off base here?
I would probably say financially, at least, Chapek probably is the right person. All we can do is just go through this period of hardship, and hopefully, once we emerge on the other side, Disney will have a better CEO.
Hey, he may have a creative side to him. No, don't know.
But he hasn't unleashed yet.
Maybe. He hasn't gotten the chance. That's the funny thing. I mean, yes,
and
6
I know
months,
he
all
doesn't
that.
like being seen as in that light as just being a cost cutter and a corner cutter.
Yeah, he hasn't had a chance to earn that reputation as anything else. All of the content that we're seeing produced right now, they're all residuals from the Eiger era, who, by the way, took 2 years as the head of creative. So we're still far removed, I think, from Chapek kind of putting a stamp on things. And I think the big moment in which he's going to start doing that, I think, is going to be at the D23 Expo coming up here in September.
I'm excited for D23 Expo for so many reasons.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you can include this on the list right here. I think it's going to be a fascinating type show. Do you predict anything else coming out of Chapek, however? Exactly. Let's go ahead and there you go.
Just a small question though. Do you think Bob Chapek is going to bring Josh D'Amaro on stage with him?
Oh, I think he has to.
He has no choice.
I think so because...
Not because of the cult of personality, but because of the fact that he's announcing for the parks. Sorry, Ali, you were going to say.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the risk of him being booed is less and less, actually. So I don't. If he has D'Amaro with him, it's not going to be a shield from booing. It's just because he feels it's news that needs to be shared with D'Amaro, like the parks, etc. Go ahead, Matthew. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I said what I wanted to say.
I think Braden took a screen grab of some of the comments that were because there was a live stream of the dedication for the Disney Wish that was just
oh yeah, I've seen
just
that. Everyone was just defending Josh D'Amaro to near death and saying that it favoured him more, but it favoured Chapek.
Yeah, the anti-Chapek comments were pretty brutal. That now again, that's anybody online who can make those comments, right? So maybe a little bit different
when you're sitting in an auditorium and they can easily find you and
correct.
You have to go.
And you're a major Disney fan. You paid $130, $175 a ticket or whatever it costs to get in there now. It's a little bit different audience, whatever, a little bit different consequences, as you astutely point out, Alia. Still, though, just to make sure nothing happens, I think bringing out both Chapek and D'Amaro as kind of a tag team might be for the best, at least right now.
But there aren't accounts when he's walking through the parks of him being booed at. So,
True. That's true. But when you have maybe somebody who's just kind of in the crowd walking, it's a little bit different than having your name announced, right? And, what is it? Let's see here.
But there aren't boos for Kathleen Kennedy.
Bob Chapek, that's a little bit different.
But there aren't boos for Kathleen Kennedy at Star Wars Celebration or anything.
That's true. That's true.
People, people are different when they're in public because it's...
Okay, fair.
Because if you look at all these YouTube channels like Nerdrotic, Bolstrek, Overlord DVD, Critical Drinker, they all place Kathleen Kennedy in a terrible, terrible light. But from what you said, at least, it's a completely different story at these conventions.
Right. It's a different sort. And
even a lot of them are there, and they're just like, "Oh, I'm in public now, and I'm easily found if I boo, so I better be quiet."
I think, I don't think if they bring them out together, I think they'll be okay. You can take a risk, I suppose, sending Chapek out there, and any of the hecklers might be removed. I don't know. To me, it still feels like you bring them out together just in case, right? And you can still have
parks. If they start at the parks presentation, but it wouldn't make sense for them to come out together at the Legends ceremony, and that's
absolutely not. No. So, and with Josh D'Amaro, obviously we're talking about the context that's just a parks presentation. Everything else, that's a little bit different of a thing and how you handle that for sure, no question. It's just like the Legends ceremony. You have a lot of people like from within the company who attend those kind of things. With the parks panel, it's just fans, and it happens to be Chapek's kind of
kryptonite.
It's fans are still kind of disgruntled even when he was there, right? So it's kind of his weakest, division, so to speak, that you can kind of connect him to and all that kind of stuff. That association, right? anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you could still have him, and I would do this, right? Okay, for example, if you had like a Tomorrowland presentation, which everybody kind of thinks will happen, I'm not so sure, but what if it does? Okay, it does. Then let's say you had like an announcement that the People Mover was coming back. Have Chapek announce that Universal plays Universal Applause, and now you have him associated with something positive. Go ahead, Alia.
But okay, now that I think about it, though, the CEO usually isn't really the only panel the CEO appears at is the opening Legends ceremony and then the closing ceremony, right? They only appear at the park ceremony if there's going to be like huge news. So
yes,
unless there's going to be huge news, yes, that he'll announce to give like kind of his credit, his idea kind of thing. Chances are he's not going to be at the park ceremony. It's just going to be the Legends ceremony.
Chances are he's not. That's a good point. I guess what I'm saying is that in order to kind of build that goodwill, have him be attached to projects and towards upcoming things that are universally positive.
Like People Mover, yes.
Right, like People Mover, or like really anything at the parks panel. I mean, if he announces anything big and things that fans may be looking forward to, have his name attached to it. This is kind of the one instance in where you maybe want to go off script a little bit and not duplicate what they've done in the past. Have him associated with big announcements, with big things that will be to the benefit of fans. I think if you do that, then you start associating him in kind of a different context than previously had been done before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Christina, if you're listening.
Yeah, exactly. This is how you do it. Associate him with the good. And then you have people online going, hey, whoa. You have people in his corner, so to speak, kind of defend him online, which he is. I mean, he is in need of that, man.
We're the minority, yes.
We're the minority. I mean, even still, right? We will be fair to Chapek, right? But I don't think you have a lot of people like defending him in the way that maybe we saw with even Daddy Josh or Iger or these other executives.
Oh, no.
I think he needs that a little bit. He needs a little people in his camp going, hey, he might be this, but this, you need that. And I think that would go a long way. But it's a fascinating thing. I'll say this one last time. I will agree with you. People, in the company right now, I don't think any of your jobs are, it's not going to quite be Vader in the Village, right? I think you all are safe right here. But I will say, now that Chapek's kind of there, and he's going to be there for 3 years.
He's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. It's going to be him or you. Just saying.
Unless there's an official shareholder revolt, it's done.
It's done, right? And with how crazy the Disney Company has been, we can't
rule it out. But
we can't rule it out.
But what Abigail Disney's doing is not. It's a shareholder revolt, but it's for his salary. It's not even for his job. So,
which is interesting. I would have thought that she would have been gunning for him.
I just want you to make less, but it's way less than Zaz. So
all the Abby failed Disney.
I think
I've just sent that picture I sent you last week. When I last appeared on the show of Bob Chapek saying they can't fire me, and it was from an article published back in February. During that initial part of Revolt, we might as well just get it up again, just so fans know he's here.
And I would love to put it up again, but I don't have control over the screen share, unfortunately. I absolutely know what you're talking about, though. Look, they can't fire me, right? That's kind of the mantra over this whole thing. And to be more accurate, I think they could. It's just he's not done anything egregious to earn that. And so the people who are trying to fire him, they're looking at the wrong. Oh, here we go.
Ooh.
Right there.
OG's in the background. Thank you.
OG's in the back. He's doing the producer role. Looking good, sir. Looking good. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, it's just this smug face that makes everybody freak out. But look, he's
First, I'm
doing.
just like, oh, it's his face. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm not going to judge people on their appearances. So.
No, it's. I think it's. Hey, look, listen. I think it's.
And if the PR stumbles really concerned the board, maybe they had a little bit of a statement about that within, or it could have been a dividing vote. I don't. It wouldn't be unanimous, but it was unanimous. So, but yes,
It was,
maybe in private they said, okay, please shape up with these PR stumbles.
right. It was absolutely unanimous, and he did what he was tasked to do, which is, hey, make
All
the
the
company
sexy,
money.
yeah.
Oh boy!
I know these same people that are criticizing Chapek with his looks. I wonder how many of them are saying something rude about Patrick Stewart, or
It's an interesting thing, and that speaks to. By the way, a lot of that, I think that the perception around Josh D'Amaro as compared to Bob Chapek as compared to Bob Iger, so much of that is just looks and just this kind of
superficial stuff. Yeah.
Superficial stuff, yeah, exactly. And it's distasteful, I think. It's
I think, yes, if you peel the layers and really get to the nitty gritty, I think that's the source of a lot of it. And a lot of people will deny that, but
they do, but you kind of know. Look, if Chapek looked like Josh D'Amaro, maybe we're not, having the same ire directed at him, so to speak, right? Exactly.
Oh, gee.
Peel the layer. There you go.
Hey, to be fair, though, Dwayne Johnson, he embraces that side of him. He posted that video or something of him with the mask. It's like, you go, Dwayne.
Oh, jeez. Oh, my gosh. But it's like...
But I bet he does do that. I bet Josh does do that.
I bet he does. Look, hey, listen, when you have the Grand California Resort and Spa, maybe that's what you do on a Friday night. I don't know. And I don't want to take anything away. Take care of yourself. But look, listen. Zaslav, to your point, right? I think he gets paid like $264 million a year or some crazy astronomical figure that I didn't even know existed. But,
especially when he's just like, everybody, you got to cut costs. All of it.
Exactly.
My paycheck? No.
Well, you got to pay a salary. So yeah, there you go. Right. That's just fiduciary duty right there. But Chapek in comparison gets paid like what, $32 million. I mean, it's not even close. And the fact that Abigail was going after his pay and not his job maybe speaks to. It speaks to maybe where her head is at, and it's not towards shareholders. I'll put it that way. But look, you have a board, and I think somebody was making the point here. You have a board of directors who is very much profit focused, right? Who is looking for a company who is going to be generating revenue on all cylinders, and who really doesn't care where that dollar comes from. And I think Chapek and them are in agreement with that. And when it comes to the financial aspects of the company, I think they were on the same page. I think all this stuff is noise, and they kind of understand, hey, you're taking us in a good direction, go. And I think that's why a lot of Hollywood, insiders and all that were stunned, like, because they were looking at other metrics that weren't necessarily important to the whole equation. And if you want to know what the future is going to be, think along those lines, and you can kind of predict
like Wall
what's going
Street.
to happen.
Yeah.
Yep. You can predict what's going to happen, both with the board, Chapek, and everything else. So I think that wraps that about does it. I don't think there's anything else to go over.
I don't think there is.
Anything you need to add on, Matthew?
No, not that I can think of.
Okay. Well, hey, Matthew, I really do appreciate. I know we had some technical difficulties. Really do appreciate you coming on. What time is it over there in the UK?
Thank you, Matthew.
Coming up to 10 past 10.
Okay, so not horrible, but it's late for you. I know.
Thank you.
You got stuff to do.
joining us.
Thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to do that. A lot of fun with you on. You bring up some really, really great points. Alia, the same goes to you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
You're very welcome. Celebrating Chapek's renewal. Woo!
to celebrate Chapek's renewal there, which is very,
get all
very
this hate
interesting.
mail now.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna be
Right.
like, bring it.
Right. It's so funny.
Like I have control.
Well, yeah. Well, but look, I think, like I said, I will say this. Some people might want other people in this role, but for right
We
now,
are where we are. So
we're where we are, and I think he's the best guy for the job right now. We'll see.
a lot
let's
of
see
the
what
what
happens.
ifs or I wish or I mean it's in a lot of ways I feel it's unfair to him, and also we are where we are. So just
Where we are. But
and
Alia,
hence why I am feeling positive and celebrating.
hey, thank you so much for coming
Alia
on.
Aloha on Twitter.
Alia Aloha on Twitter. Let's see. It's this one right here. Is that right? There we go. Right there. Still getting used to it, guys.
That's like a butterfly.
And Matthew, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you on Twitter yourself?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthew85190042.
and OG mentioned
Fantastic.
he would add the link as a
Yeah,
pinned comment, I believe, or in the body of the description of the stream.
yeah.
Absolutely, 100% right there. And I will echo OG sentiments right there, scrolling on the Chiron below. Yes, thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
us.
everyone.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on, OG. I know you can hear me back there behind the glass, so to speak. Right. Thank you so much for having me on. Best place to find me is at @BashGuy right down there, just like it's spelled. For all the robust discussions, it's been very, very interesting on there as of late. Thank you so much there for that. Here, let's do a little bit of that, a little bit of an alert there. Thank you so much for that. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at OrangeGo55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juice, news, and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
But really, nothing compares with a freshly squeezed.
I love that drop from.
Yeah, I haven't used that
right
chat for
there.
quite a while.
Yeah, well, I love that drop, but I try to keep it fresh, right? I don't want to overuse it, right?
Yeah, I understand.
Good stuff right there. And if you want to see more of this content, guys, well, you guys know what to do. You guys can subscribe down below, hit the red button right there. Really helps with the channel. And if you really like us, please share it. We get unbelievable feedback from that. Dr.
OG's
Dre
on fire.
picking up the fresh drops.
Behind the scenes.
Right there. Oh, man.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this
There
show.
you go, right there. How about that? A little bit right there. Yeah, Dr. Dre, that's so funny. I'm not unworthy of the moniker, but thank you so much. Hey, sharing our videos though really helps it out. I mean, honestly, it's really been fantastic. I'm seeing a lot of good trends lately in regards to that. So, thanks so much for staying for our 1 hour and 47-minute crew. Thank you so much, and until next time, have a magical day.